Hello, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to share a powerful and transformative message with you, brought to you by the Transformers Global Leadership Center. Our vision is focused on raising a new generation of Christian leaders who are called to bring about personal, national, and global transformation. Whether you're looking to deepen your faith, grow as a leader, or make an impact in your community, this message is designed to inspire and equip you to fulfill God's calling on your life. And here's the best part: you can download and listen to all our messages online. Simply visit www.transformersglobal.org and gain access to this life changing content. You'll find practical insights and spiritual guidance that can help you step into your God given purpose. Thank you for being part of this movement. Together, we can make a difference in the world. We look forward to walking this path with you.
For me, it has been, very empowering personally. Okay. Mind opening, and it has given me opportunity to reflect on a lot of things. And I'm hoping that as we continue in that conversation, I'm hoping that it is the same for you. I thank you guys who just spoke and gave feedback concerning the teachings we've been having. I'm grateful to God that it's, having a tremendous impact on you. And I hope that it will continue not just to impact you, but to impact those who are around you, eventually your community and the entire nation. Okay. Today I'm going to be speaking, specifically on the topic, we call lessons from a fall, how wise leaders recover. Okay. Going through the story of Joshua, you will find out that Joshua started right. Okay. In fact, he ticked all the dots and crossed all the T's. We looked at his life from hearing God, understanding what the vision is, understanding the scope of the vision, assembling the people. We saw Joshua's impact in gathering data on how to engage with the enemy. He had an understanding of what he was supposed to do. Okay. But we saw, as soon as we moved to Joshua chapter 6, we saw Joshua engage in his very first battle, which of course he won. Okay, or we would assume that he won, only for them to engage in the second battle. And it was, in fact, when you read the scripture from Joshua chapter 7, the Bible specifically said that, their battle to Ai was a sound defeat. Okay. And of course, we last week we had a look on some of the things that affected them in that journey. But more importantly, I also want us to examine the aspect of the fall. Okay. As humans, personally, I am very conscious of my fallibility. And as humans, we will always find ourselves in a position where, we are going to make mistakes, or we'll find ourselves in a place where we will consider, a great fall that will affect, we feel detrimental to our business, our organization, or who we are in life. If you've not experienced that, this is not to say that it is a must, but it is almost inevitable that as a leader, you are going to find yourself in a place. When we talk about fall, it could be emotional exhaustion. Okay, it could be any kind of failure that could, be of a negative effect to your person or to your organization. And we find out that it's not just about following God. It's not just about being perfect as a leader. Even within an organization, there are things that can happen directly through you or indirectly that could be, a big fall for you. Okay. And that is what we see in the book of Joshua chapter 7, from Joshua chapter 6 to Joshua chapter 7. Achan was a leader. Achan is a symbol of a leader, though not expressly representing Joshua, but we see that Achan was a man who had an impact over a nation. And that was why his decision not only affected his life, he affected his family, he affected his nation, and it led to the fall in the next battle. Okay. But what I'm trying to draw our attention in this teaching is how Joshua was able to recover from that fall. Okay. Most times we seem to hold on to the fall in such a way that we almost never find the zeal or the grace to move on after the fall. Okay, but we see that Joshua was almost immediately able to recover from that fall, move forward into the next battle, won the battle, and continue to win the battle all the way. So I wanted us to examine, the principles, like we always say, what did Joshua do wrong? What did he do right? And then what can we as today's leaders learn from those principles in order to make sure that we also succeed when we find ourselves experiencing failure? Okay. One of the things I wanted to, mention to you guys, you know, is that there are certain things I need you to know about failure. Okay. Failure doesn't mean you are not called. Oftentimes you are going to find yourself, in a place as a leader where you are so sure about what you want to do. You are so sure about the organization you want to start. And then eventually something happens. And what happens is that you start questioning yourself. You start asking yourself, am I even supposed to start this in the first place? Am I even supposed to? In fact, I often hear people say that failure can be an opportunity for you to reassess and ask yourself whether you are supposed to be where you are supposed to be. Okay. Why I find, a great truth in that failure does not mean you are not called. Okay. Failure also does not mean you are not finished, that you are finished. Sometimes people, after experiencing failure, feels like, I'm done with life. I'm done with this. My own is finished. My organization can never recover. No, as we are going to see from the life of Joshua, there is always room. There is always opportunity to restart. And that is why this conversation is very critical and very important. Okay. Like I said, if you've not had that experience in your life, this is an opportunity for you to look at these principles, learn from it, and prepare yourself for the future. Okay. The next thing I want to also mention to you is that failure doesn't mean you can't continue. Okay. It doesn't mean you can't continue. Okay. So you can be called and still fail. You can start right and still run into challenges and still run into problems. Okay. It doesn't mean that you can't continue. And I want you guys to, take good note of that. Um, One of the things I also want to mention, before I move into, those steps of recovery is that whenever you experience failure in leadership, whenever you experience failure running an organization, running a business, in your personal life, in your family, there are key emotions that come with failure. Okay. So one of them I want to mention is shame and isolation. Okay. Um, I find what I'm sharing with you guys deeply personal, in the sense that I went through memory lane while thinking about this, and I kind of reflected over some of the things I've done in life, some of the failures. I used to say that I started very early in life. Okay, started my first business in when I was just in second year in the university. I started a lot of things early in life. And because I also started early, what it also means that I am inexperienced in most of the things I started. And it led me into a great deal of failure. It led me into a great deal, of a lot of mishap. I had to learn through the journey. And one thing I knew I struggled with, especially in my seasons of failure, doubt, and a lot of questioning, is there was that constant shame. There was that constant isolation. You find yourself when, you are moving around and people are talking, possibly minding their business. Even in your head, you are thinking, oh, maybe they are talking about me. Okay, so I constantly find myself, even when somebody will call you and tell you, oh, I went somewhere and they were talking about you, and this is what so and so said. So you will be encumbered with that emotion of shame and isolation. okay, which also often comes with fear and this fear of being disqualified. So most times, even when I have an opportunity to do something, because of my failure, I have that tendency within me to feel that, oh, maybe I've been disqualified, or maybe I can't do this, or maybe it's not for me, it's for some people. Okay, so from shame and isolation, it makes you to start feeling disqualified. You don't want to engage. Even when they give you opportunity to do something, there's that fear associated with you thinking, this might just lead to another failure. Okay. And these emotions are critical. When we begin to unpack recovery, you will see why it's important that I'm mentioning this. And one of the things I also want to say is that there's going to be a lot of chaos inside you. Okay, that emotion is going to bring out a lot of chaos in your private life, which leads to further distortions of things around you. Okay, so it means that it's going to impact your relationship, it's going to impact your goals, it's going to impact your vision. So you discover that failure in one point of your life usually has a ripple effect on other areas of your life. Okay, so just because you failed in one area of life doesn't necessarily mean it should affect every area of your life. And these are key emotions that you must manage when you are managing a fall. Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is that there's that temptation to quit, there's that temptation to hide. I said it when I mentioned that failing doesn't mean you can continue. Okay, there's that temptation to quit and hide, take yourself out of the place, take yourself out of the location, recluse into where you almost find yourself not reachable by others. Okay, these are emotions associated with failure. It's important that we talk about this because if you don't have, if you are not aware of what it does to you, you might not be fully aware to engage the truths that is going to bring you out of it. Okay, so like I said, it's almost inevitable for you to experience failure. But one thing I want you to understand is that you can almost always immediately recover after a fall. It all depends on how you go about it. Okay, so when we look at the book of Joshua, specifically Joshua chapter 7, if we take it from verse 1, there were a few steps that Joshua took that I would want us to look at. Okay. And one of them is that there was a sincere heart from Joshua to seek out the solution. Okay. So the Bible said that they threw themselves on the ground, and started seeking the Lord. They started seeking the face of the Lord concerning the failure, the sound defeat that happened in AI. Okay, I saw it as a leader's effort to sincerely seek out solution, for what went wrong. Um, the reason I mention these emotions is that they are likely going to be the very first thing you are going to feel whenever you fall. So the surge of emotions that will come to you when you fall is shame and isolation. Okay, fear of being disqualified. But you see, Joshua never entertained those emotions. In fact, what Joshua prioritized immediately after the fall was to seek out the solution. What do I need to do next in order to fix this problem? Okay, so he engaged his mind in an active response to create solution rather than just allowing himself to be absorbed by the emotions of fear, the emotions of disqualification. I mean, Joshua would have felt disqualified as a leader. Imagine leading the army of your nation, to a battle, and there was a sound defeat. Everybody comes back, soldiers wounded, many people died, families crying, children lost. Imagine, you are going to feel disqualified as a leader. You are going to be asking yourself questions. What exactly happened? I thought I heard from God. How come we went there and it didn't work? But you see, Joshua did not waste his time trying to figure out, his shame, or trying to feel disqualified, or trying to maybe ask himself questions about Do I need to isolate myself or even become shameful? The Bible said that he came together with the elders of the nation. He didn't isolate himself. And they all started seeking the face of God. They started making inquiry. What went wrong? What happened? This is not the promise you gave to us. So there was an intentional heart to say, instead of focusing on my failure, instead of focusing on how I feel about my failure, which is usually where most people are trapped, what Joshua did was he took a decisive step to say, what is the solution to what happened? Okay. And that was when God spoke to him and said, you guys took what you are not supposed to take from Jericho. And that is why the fall in AI happened. And immediately he got an answer. The next thing that he did is the second thing I want to mention. He created a process to find out what that problem is. And he created a process that was not just able to find a problem, but also to get to the root of the problem. I find it sometimes when I read the Bible, I don't know about you, it puzzles me, when God will say, call all the tribes in Israel, and I will show you the particular tribe. And then they call out the tribe, and they will say, okay, get the Urim and the Turim, and I will show you the tribe that it came from. Okay. And then they did it. He said, okay, this is a tribe. And then God said, call all the clans under that tribe, and I will show you the particular clan. And then they called all the clan. And then what happens is that what? They said, okay, after the clan is selected, they say, okay, call all the families under that clan. And when they call all the families, the first thing in my mind was, God, it was Acre. Why do we have to go through a process? Why do we have to just go one by one to try to find out which family exactly that took what was not supposed to be taken from Jericho? But you see that God was trying to show us that sometimes it takes a process to find a solution that you want to find out. And Joshua was committed to that process. Joshua was committed to getting to the root of the problem. So, when you find a clan, it's almost okay to say, okay, I've seen what the problem is. Okay, but then you move down to the family, and then you find the right family, the right individual, and then they go to the individual's house, dug out what was stolen, and then took care of the problem. Okay, so most times when we fall, there's every possibility for you to have shallow thoughts, shallow thinking about what led you to that failure or what led you to that defeat. But you see that Joshua took out time, followed a process to get to the root of the problem. He followed the process to get to the root of the problem. And that was how he was able to fix the problem. So as a leader, as a young leader, why it's important for you to, discover the plans of God, get going on the vision that God has placed in your heart. One key thing that is important is that you need to prepare your heart for a fall that could come from you or from someone in your team or from issues that are not even connected to who you are. You have to prepare for the fall. And how do you go about it? The first, have a sincere heart of seeking out the solution. Then understand that you have to go deep and find the root of the problem. The other day we were discussing in one of the fellowships, and we started talking about what is even the problem of Nigeria. Okay, is it really corruption? Is it really lack of jobs? Is it really some of the things we look at it? And by the time we kept on narrowing it down, a lot of issues came out, in terms of issues about national unity, in terms of our national divide. And then we now ask ourselves questions. How many political parties, how many political giants are even including in their manifesto the issue of the national divide? So sometimes you discover that when you look at the problems on the surface level, you might think that you've solved it. Why is this important? When you look at problem on the surface, thinking that you've solved it, there are chances that you are going to repeat that fall again. And when you find yourself repeatedly, experiencing a particular fall in your life, what it shows you is that you are not really getting to the root of the problem. Okay, so you have some shallow form of understanding of what you think the problem is, and then you run out for solution. What happens is that the problem happens again, and that cycle continues, that cycle of fall, rise, usually because we don't often get to the root of the problem. Okay, so you see that Joshua took time. Joshua took time. It's not a quick fix. Fixing your problem also is not a quick fix. I think that's also what God was trying to show Joshua. It's not a quick fix. That means you have to identify the process. You have to be committed to the process, and then you must intentionally get to the root of the problem. Okay. So the next thing I want to quickly mention to us is that also try to learn what the fall reveals. We said something last week, which I believe I need to mention a bit again here, is that when a leader takes his eyes off the vision towards his provision, it always opens him up for crisis. Okay? A leader's heart must always, be focused on the vision. And a fall should reveal to you what is taking your heart away from the vision. Okay, and that is what we see in the life of Achan. We mentioned it last week that Achan went into that battlefield after conquering Jericho, felt the need to take care of his personal needs. Okay, even though God has made a provision, God had a plan to take care of his personal needs. Jericho was just a type of first fruits. Jericho was set apart specifically for God. And when we go into that, we've discovered why God usually set things apart. Okay, God doesn't necessarily come down to take those things that are set apart, but there are spiritual implications of things set apart. For instance, in the case of Saul, where he was given an instruction, when you go into the land, kill everybody, kill the king, or he decided to spare the king, and it led to a lot of issues, in his kingdom, which eventually led to him losing his kingship. So usually when God puts preservation, is for some form of spiritual purpose. So here you see that Achan's passion or desire to fix his personal problem first took him to work against the vision, which led to the fall. Why it's important to find the solution, why it's important to be sincere about finding the solution, I think we need to also pay attention to what the fall reveals about our heart. What does it reveal about you? What does it reveal about your priorities? What does it reveal about things that are important to you and things that you should prioritize? I said this last week that even though our needs are legitimate, even though that our personal desires are legitimate, we have to be able to find ourselves in a place where we prioritize those needs legitimately and ask ourselves, okay, which one comes first? And we said last week that vision comes first. Vision must always be put first, because anytime you lose vision, you also lose the ability to meet your needs, because it's the vision that provides for you. So lack of vision will also lead to more defeat, which we saw in the life of Achan. He took the gold, he took the tonic, like the Bible said. Did he use it? No. It eventually led to destruction, because he took his eyes off the vision to his personal needs. He lost the vision. He also lost his ability to meet his personal needs. So ask yourself, each time there is a fall, as you get root of that, find out what does it reveal. Okay. So for instance, you are working in an organization or you're running in a business and you discover that, something is happening to your stock, or things are not being recorded the way it should be recorded, or things are not being done the way it should be done, and you just discovered what the problem is. As a leader, go a little bit further and ask, what does this problem reveal? Okay, so do I have a staff that still maybe because I'm not paying enough? Do I have a staff that still maybe because I need to look at my recruitment process, how I hire and how I handle my staffing management? What exactly does the problem reveal in your life? What does it reveal in your organization? What does it reveal wherever you find yourself? Your inability to understand that can also lead to repetition of that fall. Okay. And the last thing I want to mention is deal with the issues decisively. The moment you discover what the issues are, you have to be able to deal with it decisively. You find it in the life of Joshua. The moment Achan was spotted out, God's instruction about how Achan should be dealt with, there was no delay on Joshua's part to execute that. Okay, compare that with the life of Saul. Compare that with the story of Saul. You know, the Bible said that even when Saul was confronted about why he had to bring back the king that he was supposed to kill, you know, Saul kept on justifying it. He had reasons. They said, okay, but you are supposed to kill the sheep. You are supposed to kill these animals. He said, yes, I brought it back so I can sacrifice to the Lord. So you discover that at the end of the day, Saul was not dealing decisively with the problem that was discovered. But you see, Joshua, the moment the problem was discovered, Joshua went in all out and he started doing what? He started taking care of what caused the problem. Okay, and this is what you need to understand as a new leader, as a future leader, is that there is need for you to ruthlessly deal with what caused your failure. Your inability to deal with that will also create repetition in your life. Okay, so the best way I summarize it is, first, be sincere in your heart about seeking out the solution. Okay, and then the second one is that follow through on the process of getting to the roots. Okay, and the third one is learn what your fall reveals about your heart. And then, of course, the fourth one is deal with the issues decisively. So once you understand what the issues are, once you understand what the root of the problem is, you have to be decisive about it. Okay, you have to go all the way, you know, to make sure that it is no longer operable in your life. It is no longer operable in your organization. You build everything around it to make sure that it no longer raises its head up and it no longer affects your vision. It no longer affects your journey. That was what Joshua did. That was what, together, you know, with the elders and the entire Israelites, as they seek out God to solving the problem, that was exactly what happened. And guess what? It gave them a great comeback. It gave them a great comeback. As soon as that was done, their next battle was a great win. It gave them a great comeback, which also means that failure is not the end. Failure is not the end. So when I also compare this story to the story of Samson, I think I once, you know, give an illustration with that. Samson did not die because he was meant to die. Samson died because he wanted to die. So the emotions surrounding his problem was too much for him to handle, that he made him not to go deep into the root of what the solution of the problem was. Okay, the same Samson that was asking God, you know, to give him strength. You know, even while he was asking God to give him strength, he said that he would die with these people. Why did he want to die? There was a lot of shame. He wanted to isolate himself. He felt he's a failure. He felt disqualified. Why is it important for me to mention this again is that when you fall, most times it's not that your fall is too big that you can't come out of it. It's not that your fall is so powerful that you can't find a solution. The problem usually is that we focus too much on the emotions associated with the fall, that it makes us to take our eyes off the solution. So you are checking, what are people going to say? Okay, if I walk out here and come back to Israel, how are people going to see me? So Samson wanted to die, because the same Samson would have asked God for eyes, and he would have picked a jawbone, do what he does best, you know, take his clothes and go back home and be the judge of Israel for the rest of his life. Samson would have had a great comeback. But the reason he didn't have a great comeback is because he was encumbered with the emotions surrounding his failure, and that was why he's not able to come back. And I feel very, very, particular about this issue of emotion, because I know that most times what keeps us where we are is not that we can come out, but it's the thinking, the continuous thinking, the continuous thoughts about previous failures, about failures of the past, is what keeps us stuck. Someone said you can't move forward looking back. That means that even if you want to look back to check whether things are all right or whether there are things you need to pick up, to move forward, you ultimately have to look forward. And that's exactly what Joshua did. I imagine Joshua, welcoming all the soldiers and telling them, okay, guys, you're welcome. Okay, it's fine. Let's go seek the face of God. Let's find out what went wrong. As a leader, we mentioned it last week, he humbled himself. He humbled himself. He took up the responsibility first. The elders joined him. The entire Israel joined him to seek out God, to find out what went wrong. So there's that humility in his heart as a leader in seeking out God, not focusing most times. What I also think that is underlying that makes us too absorbed in the emotion is that we become too self-conscious. We become, conscious of who we are, who people think we are, how people see us, what is happening around us. When we are absorbed in those emotions, what happens is that we often don't become intentional about seeking out answers. Okay? So as I summarize this, I want to say that failure is not the greatest thing or the worst thing that can happen to you. There can be a comeback in every failure. So embrace it anytime it happens. Just like Joshua, turn your eyes on the solution, dig deep into the roots, find out what it reveals about your heart, and then be decisive on the actions that you need to take. Don't dilly-dally around it, trying to, justify, do I really have to do this? Do I have to be decisive? Be decisive. Take a conscious effort, to take care of what led to the fall. I believe it is going to prepare your heart, prepare you, not just for a big comeback, but for success, your entire life. Like I said, I reflected a lot around my life. I reflected a lot around things, that I consider big failures in my life in the past. And I was able to pick up, I was able to continue moving because I intentionally chose not to look at my past. I intentionally chose not to look behind. I remember one day I had a conversation with some group of men, and I was sharing my past failures. Some of them, their eyes were open, like, you, you've done this, you've experienced this. Like, in fact, one of them came out after the meeting and was telling me, man, the courage you have to even share this with us, it's mind-blowing. I say, yes, we all fail. We all fail. We all make mistakes. We all have done things we are not proud of. We all have done things, we believe we are not supposed to do. But don't let that emotion keep you down. Don't let it overwhelm you to the point that you are not seeking out the real solution. In fact, if we begin now to prepare our hearts, it can reposition us more effectively to a comeback, more than we can ever imagine. Okay, so I want to thank you guys for tuning in today, and I hope you've been able to take out a few lessons for yourself tonight. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you for listening. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Transformers Global LC, on Twitter X at T Global LC,